not going nowhere. Not this weekend. It's too crazy out there on them streets.
But Dad, there's a 3-on-3 tournament this weekend.
I don't care about no basketball. Do you know your mama found gang paraphernalia in your drawer? In my house. Now how am I supposed to trust you?
Man, this ain't fair. None of my teammates gotta deal with these stupid rules.
You know why? Do you know why? Because most of those knuckleheads ain't even got a father to look out for them anyway.
But they look out for me. When I'm at school, my boys are the ones that got my back.
Who you talking about? You talking about Kenny? You think that's your boy?
Man, why you always gotta say something about Kenny? Aren't you and Uncle Shaw like brothers? Why you always tripping?
Hey, you watch your mouth, Jalen. Now, I'm not one of your friends, okay? I don't see why you don't understand how dangerous it is out there and that we don't approve of who you're associating with.
What, you want me to hang out with the cornball that cleans the shop?
What's wrong with Anthony? Why is it corny to be smart? Why is it corny to do what you ask? Why is it corny to handle your business? That's not corny, son. That's being a man.
I want to thank you all, everyone who's here, everyone who's listening, for your attention and time today. And we really hope that this conversation will help everybody that's on this call today, but also that it will inspire people to begin to have similar dialogues across the country. I mean, you can take this format and it's free. It doesn't cost you guys anything to get together and have a conversation on an ongoing basis about what's going on in the world, how it's affecting us, because as our specialist, Jamal Nesbitt, who is he's our resident expert. He's an experienced therapist who will be moderating this conversation today. Jamal has been working in the mental health field since 2013 and is skilled in a variety of subjects for individuals and groups of all ages. We've met him before, talked to him. We know he knows about this stuff. And from our perspective, it's important not to just, get around and shoot the breeze so much as having having conversations that are guided by somebody that really knows how to have these kind of conversations, to draw the best out of us and to make sure that we're on a path that really is beneficial. Because, I'm not taking these are accomplished men who have lots to do today and every day, and to have them take the time out of their lives and their busy schedules to have this kind of conversation, I'm really trusting that something beneficial is going to come out of it for them. And that is much more likely to happen if we have someone that can help to guide that conversation. So we would encourage people who like this idea to think about engaging someone with professional expertise to help curate and guide these conversations, because we think everybody that hears them, whether they're on the call or not, could benefit from some of the things that they hear. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jamal.
Well, thank you, Dwayne, and thank you for Sage Collective for having me. Thank you for the warm introduction, and it's definitely a pleasure being able to step in the room with such distinguished gentlemen and be able to have these tough conversations, because it's something that's very healing for our communities. And for some people that may not be in this room, as you said, but the conversation is bigger than the room, right? It spans out into other areas. And as we get into things and we watch that clip that we've seen earlier, I do want to lead into some of the conversation that we will be having today, which we'll talk about a variety of topics, some going into the questions of manhood, some of the ideologies and philosophies of manhood, the experiences that men may face, the different ways that it's shaped through culture and family dynamics. And I want to start off as we talk through things, because there is no best question first. Everything is important. I have a saying where I say a pound of feathers and a pound of gold both weigh the same. And sometimes there's things that we want to get into that feels a little too heavy. So what I want to do is just kind of lead up as we looked at that clip and we was viewing things. I want to kind of discuss the topic and of being a man. As we've seen in that video, there were some challenges. There were some different ideologies. You can see it from the different age range of what was being said to the kid and what the kid was being said to the adult. And I want to ask you guys as we lean in, when you hear the phrase "be a man" and you really process that, what does that mean to you? And what kind of characteristics do you think of when you hear the phrase "be a man"?
Not all at once now.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to jump in on that if it seems good to you. I think things have changed for me over time. When I was younger, when I would hear the phrase, that phrase used to mean being strong. It spoke of being strong, being stoic, no matter what I was experiencing and in every situation. So regardless of what I was faced with, that was often the word I would hear from uncles: be a man. Even if you were concerned, if I was afraid, if I was hesitant, if I had anxiety, no matter what the situation was, be a man, straighten up. But I'd say I have evolved. And now when I think about the notion of being a man, it means showing up fully. It means owning my emotions and taking responsibility and standing in my values. It means knowing when to lead and when to listen. And that's what I try to share with my daughters and the men in my life.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That is very powerful.
I agree with Larry. My answer is similar to that, which is when I was young, it meant one thing, which was responsibility. It was grow up and make sure that you provide for yourself, that no one has to take care of you, things of that nature. And it wasn't because of age that my perspective changed. I think it was more related to travel and seeing how men live outside of the US and even within the US, just in different states and territories. And the perspective that I have today is being a man is really about understanding my surroundings, who's within proximity to me, and having empathy for those people and the situations that they're in, and figuring out how to support them based on their needs, not what I believe their support should be. Whether it's young people, whether it's older people, it's really understanding their journeys again and not imposing my values. And what I've learned is being a man, I show up different ways in different situations, but it's all rooted in taking my collective life experiences and resources and applying some type of solution to the things that I see and the problems that the people who I love have.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Let me just jump in here, because if I were an objective viewer who was coming to this and didn't know very much about the organization or anything, I'd be wondering, well, where are the young people on this call, and where are the young people's voices? And I will please work with us, because we will be doing this again, and we have a number of people that agreed to do it. There were some timing challenges, just scheduling and all that. We had scheduled to have some people who did not have gray hair on this call, but unfortunately they had conflicts that prevented them from doing it, which is the kind of thing that will happen as you do this. Don't be discouraged. We're going to keep right going. And I'm really glad that, Larry, you started us off identifying talking about the fact that, and both of you talked about the fact that your opinions about what being a man have changed over the years, because that's exactly what we're trying to get to. Those transitions and how maturity impacts the decisions you make in your life that have tremendous consequences, not only for you, but for all those people whose lives you touch. So I would just, since I'm talking, I'll just quickly say that I can relate so much to what both Tony and Larry are saying. What I thought about when I heard people talking about being a man when I was a kid was, just straighten your spine. If you get hurt, don't cry. You're playing ball, put some, you get an injury, put some dirt on it, and keep stepping. You do not allow these things to take you off your course. You just, you're gonna be stoic, and you're gonna just battle through it. But as we get older, and life has a way of making us appreciate our vulnerabilities, it has a way of also sensitizing us to the challenges that not only we face, but that are faced by the people who are interacting with us because of what the decisions that we make and the actions that we take and how we take them. So, hopefully what will come out of this for everyone is a sense that the more we can help people to anticipate how they might come down on a decision 10 years from now, if they had the benefit of that hindsight, would be very different than the decisions they might make in the moment when you're 25 versus what you approach that same situation when you're 50. So I think that's a great question to start with.
Yeah, I so agree with all of this. And I think the challenge is for, because we all live in the now. And so when you're 18 years old or 16 or 25, that's the reality, And so it's hard. You're less receptive to, some older person trying to impart some knowledge or wisdom that, it's tough. It's tough to be receptive to that when you're young. I think that's something we got to deal with and figure out a way to allow that wisdom to be imparted. I mean, we have to figure that out because when you're 18 years old, when you're 21, you're bulletproof. I mean, you're not worried about dying, or you're not worried about anything. So I think that's a challenge.
One of the things, two things, if I can jump in. One, in keeping with what you were stating, Dwayne, I did have conversations with several young men about this whole idea and platform, and they really expressed interest in wanting to participate. Unfortunately, the two young men that primarily wanted to have involved both want to be traveling during this time, so they weren't able to participate now, but definitely want to participate in the future. And then my initial response to what does it mean to be a man is in keeping with what has been stated in terms of, embracing accountability. Growing up, my dad and my grandfather were my role models. And even though I was involved in sports and I played music and, you have your heroes and those type of things, my role models were my dad and my grandfather. And the things that I learned from them, and in keeping what Don was saying, it's not, don't get me wrong, I didn't always listen in the moment. Well, I heard it. I may not have responded in the moment, but I heard the things that they were saying. And more importantly, they led by example. I got to see how they carried themselves as men. I got to see how they dealt with issues like accountability and responsibility, and how they were dedicated to their families, and even like some of the sacrifices that they had to make relative to being able to, raise your kids and support your families and things of that nature. And I fast forward to now, where I just recently had the opportunity to be around a lot of young men that I've known since they were kids. And more than quite a few of them, literally, just put it in perspective. My son got married a couple of weeks ago, so we were at a wedding. So this is the environment that we were in. But a lot of the young men spoke on the things that they felt that they learned as they were growing up by being around myself and some of the other men, in my age group, so to speak. So I'm saying that to say is that I think that one way to be able to kind of bridge that gap is to continue to be that example, to continue to be mentors. Dwayne and I talked about this a little bit, not talking to them, but involving them in the type of conversations that we have so that they can hear a lot of the experiences that we have had, how we have responded and how we've dealt with things as we've gone through, the journey of life. Because even though things seem like there's a lot different now, a lot of this is just more of the same. And it's all about, one of the things that both my dad and my grandfather always instilled in me is that it's not about what happens to you or things that you encounter, but it's how you respond to it. And I think that by being able to, again, share experiences and just have conversations, then you'd be surprised how, even though it may not seem like they're, buying in, especially at that 18, 20, 22 years old, but they hear it and they retain it. And at least it gives them a foundation that when they do experience a thing, they're going to make their mistakes. We've all made our mistakes, right? But when you've got a foundation that you can kind of call upon, like, what would dad do? What would granddad do? What would Mr. Kyles do? You'd be surprised how they do remember these things and maybe don't use it the first time, but once they've been, kind of caught up, the next time around, they'll remember those things. So I think that, and again, it's something Dwayne and I talked about, is just this inclusion of the younger generation, because I don't think they get it. Like, when I say get it, they don't experience it like we did when we were coming up, right? When we were coming up, we weren't really out there in the world without an adult, so to speak, without some kind of guidance, whether it was your dad or your grandfather, or someone mentioned their uncles, things of that nature. At a very much earlier age, I think the young men of the world are kind of out there. And sometimes they're out there without, very much support. So I think that, again, there's a lot of benefit to being able to include them, to be able to share our experiences, and then just have just good, candid conversations.
Jamal, I'd like to just say one other thing that has been sparked by this. Excuse me. I think the onus really falls on us as the senior folks in this whole equation. It is very difficult, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience now, to have a conversation with a guy who's a generation or two under you and not come off as being judgmental, as being a know-it-all, as being, even when we're trying to help. It was very hard for me with my own children, with my own, nieces, nephews, excuse me, not to come across as the voice of wisdom, even when I was trying hard to just be a person. So I think it is incumbent upon us to really learn to listen a lot, because I think in order to build the trust that is going to be needed for them to take the advice in tough situations and to harken back to it, as has been said, we're going to have to listen a lot. And I think the more we can just bite our tongues, choke it down, listen to what they're saying, at some point they're going to, if you let people talk enough, they'll talk themselves into a corner, especially when they know they're on shaky ground. Just listen. If we can listen and let them talk and let them and just try to ask, and I guess this is what Jamal does for a living, try to ask the kinds of questions that lead them to the core of the basis for their reasoning. What is it that's really driving this, or whether it's emotional, whether it's whatever it is. I think we will do a better job. And see, nobody told me this. I had to learn this myself. And I think that's part of the problem. To the extent that we can really begin to have these conversations and begin to listen more effectively. If you've been in a situation like Larry has, where you're running a university and you got all these different people with all these different agendas, all this different stuff going on, you learn this on the job. You learn how to listen to all these different people with all these different agendas and really kind of cut through the stuff to really figure out what's really driving this person's pain at this point in time. And the better we get at that, it's not just about imparting the wisdom that has come to us through the school of hard knocks. It's also about really trying to figure out how we can impart that knowledge in ways that are more acceptable, that are less, speaking down to people so much as sharing with them the benefit of it at the right time by asking the right questions, making that conversation or making that information more accessible and I think more effective.
And thank y'all for sharing that, because that is a big piece to it. As y'all stated, there's many factors that can change the impact, whether it's timing, whether it's age, whether it's the way that you approach a situation. And there's a quote that says, when a student is ready, the master appears. And sometimes the teacher wants to choose the students, but the teacher doesn't get to choose the students either. The student just prepares himself when the student is ready, and the master has to be ready to teach at any time. And we don't know when that time may be. And I think that's very important to some of the things that y'all were speaking about, because as we transition through the conversation, one thing that I've been hearing about is a lot of conversation around culture and upbringing, conversations around different varieties of things that may happen in childhood or things that may have been taught outside from people close to you. And sometimes there's some internal thoughts that we have that can shape how we feel as well. So I do want to talk about what role do race, culture, and class play in shaping manhood? Because that's a very intricate thing as far as thinking from, even as men, there comes a place to where you talk about race. You talk about someone that may have lived up north versus someone that may have lived down south. Are the conversations the same? Or are those conversations different? What's your experience with that? How has that shaped your experience of manhood in any way?
I'll jump in since everybody is quiet. Yeah, I'm still dealing with Dwayne's comment about rubbing the dirt on injuries when you're a kid. I think all of us relate to that. Jamal, that's a good question. I would answer that this way from my perspective. Showing up as a Black man in America is different than showing up as a Black man in the world. I think in America, our knowledge and understanding of who we are as Black men has been shaped to fit the narrative of what Americans believe a Black man is. And that perspective comes from sitting with some people in Kenya over the past several years and looking at how Black men operate and show up in that space compared to how Black men show up in the US from what I've seen. In the US, the Black culture, I think, is that provider. It's having that job or having that career where you can put food on the table. And a lot of times you're not in the house because you're out providing, right? You miss time with the kids, you miss time with your spouse. And we get rewarded by that because people say you are a good father because your son has some new shoes, but you weren't there for the game. You ask the kid, what's more important, the shoes or the game? Ultimately, it's going to be the game. It's going to be that time. Les Brown says it very well, that his kids expected presence, not presence. They didn't want the things that he got from his speaking engagements. They wanted him to be there. That meant more to him. So as I sat down with some elders in Kenya, just sitting in the dirt in a mud hut village, when money in that currency is not the most important thing to them, it is culture, it's hierarchy, it's respect. You see how they live as a community, especially the Maasai community, who's a nomadic community. You see how they operate without the thing that we value in America, which is currency. They're very well respected. There is no such thing as disobedience by kids. It doesn't exist. I've never even heard of it exist in all of the years that I've been there. You understand your role, and elders are valued. They're the most important commodity to the Maasai community outside of cows, which is their form of currency. But elder is a thing that the young people aspire to be when they get older. It's not to be an engineer or doctor. They look forward to being an elder because that's where all of the respect of the entire community lies. So I think it depends on where we start looking at Black history and how we determine what period of time we want to start looking at what a Black man really means. And I would suggest that our value is probably far more appreciated outside of the US than inside of the US. And I think that as we learn and grow and expand our knowledge base, we should take a look at how we're perceived outside of the US, and especially from the motherland, from those 54 countries on the continent of Africa, and understanding our true value, where our place is with our families. And if we get back to, or we learn and get back to some of those core values, we don't have to ask for respect, it will be given. And we don't have to command respect. We would be honored to have it because we would truly be serving a place differently than we do in the US for our family and our communities.
Wow, and that's powerful as you share that. And I just want to highlight in that space as you talk about respect and you talk about those different roles and those different cultures. So I did want to highlight the importance of the culture once again.